Just as we began the Global Specialty Lens Symposium with the ever-popular topic myopia management, we're going to conclude it with a can't-miss session, the ever-popular Scleral Lens Super Session. In this session, you'll learn scleral lenses from A to Z, and you'll learn from the best people possible, including Jason Jedlicka, Afe Vanderwerf, Gloria Chu, and Damien Fisher. You'll learn how to fit, how to evaluate, how to troubleshoot, and you'll learn that scleral lenses change people's lives. So we'll look forward to seeing you at the Scleral Lens Super Session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I on? There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, here we are, approaching the end of our joyride. It's been a great few days seeing all of you and getting to share in our knowledge and reconnect again. As you can tell, I am not Afe Vanderwerf, who was supposed to be moderating our session, but Afe couldn't travel, and then he had a little mishap as well, so I'll let him tell you about it. We're going to start this session 8, Scleral Super Session, with Afe Vanderwerf, and he will introduce the session to you.
Hi guys, hello everybody. All the way from Amsterdam to Vegas. Sorry, due to COVID restrictions, I can't be there. And you know what? In addition, yesterday I broke my collarbone. So sorry for the outfit. This is about the best I could do in the given circumstances. And I shouldn't be laughing. And so I'm not going to laugh because that hurts. But all this is not going to prevent me from presenting this great session, and I'm going to give a little bit of introduction, but thank you so much, Jason, for stepping in and moderating this entire session. I wanted to start off with a background of beautiful mountain or volcano in Africa, the Kilimanjaro. With that cloud, it's not something that is set up or photoshopped. It's a real photo, but it sort of beautifully emphasizes what we're looking at with scleral lenses. So this is the Scleral Lens Super Session, and what we're going to do, I want to kick it off together with Damien Fisher from Australia, and we want to sort of go through the latest research. We have the luxury, believe it or not, to have about 3 or 4 PhDs in the last year. So since the last virtual GSLS, we have a lot of new information that we want to cover. And I can tell you the puzzle is really, well, it's not complete yet, but it's getting more complete for sure. And then, of course, we really want to dig into the more clinical stuff, because in the end, that's what most of us are doing in clinical practice. And man, Jason is going to kill the ocular surface shape and what to do with aligning that with the current scleral lens that we have. And then we're very fortunate to have Gloria Chu, and she's going to really dig into something that we haven't touched on much in this, in GSLS in general, and that is not just about the solution, but about the filling solution and how to keep that safe and what's the best to use. So we are in for a real nice treat, I hope, in this session. Let me start with, well, first of all, a couple of disclosures. I've lectured for all of these companies in the past, not one in particular. I'm not on anyone's payroll, so I can say whatever I want. And of course, I won't be mentioning any names of products. Well, needless to say, the star is born, right? And of course, with that star, we're talking about scleral lenses. And well, I don't know if you know that, but the movie and musical, The Star is Born, there's a couple of editions of that. That one with Judy Garland, I think, that one is from late 1950s. And that is when, late 1950s, early 60s, when we saw the first sort of, well, a little bit of a hump, if you want, in scleral lens publications. but nothing. I mean, nothing compared to the latest search. I can hardly point, but you can see there, the latest search in publications in the last, let's say, 10 years. It's quite unbelievable. So a new star is born, let's put it that way, quite literally. And let's take a look at what we know. Well, they've gotten so popular, scleral lenses, beyond my imagination. I'll be very frank with you that most US schools now, according to the Scope survey, have scleral lenses as one of their main modalities. Maybe even more so in some schools than corneal GPs. Here in Europe, it's first corneal and then certainly second scleral. US seems to be a little bit the other way around. Now, we've gotten quite comfortable with scleral lenses. The question is how comfortable, and are they too big to fail, or are there still some caveats that we need to look at? And that is what I want to do in this next, 15, 20 minutes. We'll look at an overview of the last 10 years. It's funny enough, it's the anniversary almost of the Scleral Lens Guide that came out 10 years ago. Let's see what we've learned in that period. And I get this question a lot when people ask me, why are scleral lenses so popular now? Again, the new star that is born. And I think it's complex and there are so many things. Certainly it's better materials, it's better understanding, but I think this one, better understanding of ocular shape, may be one of the, or maybe the number one reason why we can do what we are doing today. But ocular surface shape, which is what Jason will go into, is just the tip of the iceberg. I want to go actually backstage on that stage and go to what is happening behind the scleral lens. And any of you who have ever been backstage know it can be a little bit messy and chaotic. So let's take a look at that. But let's see if we are in control. That is probably the key word here. If we're in control of what is happening back there. So I want to try to cover all of these topics here in this session and or in the next session by Damien Fisher. Now the first PhD, well, not candidate, but the one who graduated is Elke Krebs from Belgium, from Ghent. And she's an ophthalmologist who did her research there on scleral lenses and keratoconus. And she found that one of the first things we need to realize, according to our studies, that it's difficulties with lens removal and application that causes dropouts, not so much physiological changes behind that lens. So that is, for me, that was quite interesting. What she also found is that the indication for a keratoplasty was 5 times lower since the introduction of scleral lenses, and that excludes the effect of corneal cross-linking. And then sort of the same was found in the US by the Gallagher Eye Center at the University of Michigan, where they found that the risk of undergoing a keratoplasty was reduced because of scleral and corneal GP lenses. So we certainly are making an impact in the field of eye care, in specialty contact lens care for sure. So let's take a look at one of the most important things. What I always tell my students when we start talking about scleral lenses, the number one benefit that scleral lenses have is that we can bridge over the entire cornea, the most sensitive part of the entire human body actually, and certainly the eye. So that's where we create clearance. And if you want to learn more about scleral lenses and clearance in particular, there's the CLEAR report, contact lens evidence-based academic report. And James Wolfson has talked about that in the safety issue, and I'm sure it popped up at other lectures in the during the meeting. All of these, 10 or 11 chapters or articles, if you want, can be downloaded from the BCLA and Contact Lens Anterior Eye website. So take advantage of that before April 1st, because they're all open access right now. I also reported in my newsletter, if you get that, you'll get an update of that anytime you want. So when talking about that clearance, we're talking about that fluid column, and I should actually say fluid reservoir thickness, because that is the new terminology that we're using. it was just too good to be true to link that to the clear report. So sorry for that, but it's got to be fluid reservoir thickness. And what we need to understand is that in order to create the right amount of clearance, we need to make sure we have a little bit of extra right there, because the lens is going to settle or sink if you want. Most of that sinking or settling will take place, 50% of that at least, in the first 30 minutes. And it can be about 100 to up to 200 microns. So that's something, if you want 200 microns to end, you may want to start with 400 microns to begin with. And sort of proof of that comes from another PhD, Maria Walker, and she looked at a couple of really interesting things. And one of them is the conjunctiva. We're always looking at the cornea, but she actually looked at the conjunctiva. What you can see in the graphs here, if I can do that without hurting myself, is that yes, there is an indentation of the scleral lens on the conjunctiva, and that after 24 hours of removal of the scleral lens, actually there is that rebound effect. So of course, and luckily, that conjunctiva goes back to normal or the initial stage. But it's simply a proof that there is that conjunctival indentation. And what she also found that after removal, maybe 60 or statistically after 90 minutes, there is that rebound back to almost before wearing the scleral lens. So that is really good information to know, sort of a proof that there is that settling or sinking into the conjunctiva. Other thing to remember that we know from the clear report and other papers, of course, is that we have the tendency to overestimate that vault by looking with the slit lamp, with and without fluorescein, actually. And the best thing really is to do is to take the lens thickness and not the cornea as a reference. Although I have to say the lens thickness may vary by 100 micron, even by CE and FDA standards, that would still be acceptable. So even the thickness of the lens is not perfect, but of course we'll get a really good grip. Most important is that it does bridge the cornea. If you really want to know the exact numbers, probably an OCT is better at doing that, measuring the exact clearance and different parts of the scleral lens over the corneal surface too. Now the SCOPE survey, fantastic survey, did a lot of things, and one of the things they did is they asked participants to look at what do you think is the ideal corneal clearance and limbal clearance. And the numbers they came up with is this 200 microns for the corneal and about 60 microns for the limbal clearance. There was a little bit of a range there, but yeah, that seems to be the number that we all can sort of live by. One interesting paper from Canada, with Young, found that, and I'm not sure if this is confirmed by other studies, but it's certainly interesting to look at, and I covered that in my newsletter too, is that if there is greater comfort with higher limbal clearance. So I'm not quite sure how that works, but that is something to look at in more depth. When we talk about that, looking at things in more depth, I'm not going to cover in this particular session the oxygen demands and the delivery of that to the cornea, because we have the next speaker, Damien Fisher, who is really going to nail that. I've read his entire PhD thesis. It's fantastic. He is, for the last decade, we've been debating oxygen, right? Is there enough? What if it gets through the lens, but then it has to go through the fluid reservoir too? It's like a piggyback system. Is there enough? How much thickness can you have of the lens, of the clearance, and what decay? He's looked at all of it, even at fenestrations, and he's going to cover all of that. I'm going to conclude that part by saying we only see clinically problems when it comes to diseased eyes, challenging eyes. So especially corneal grafts are probably the most difficult eyes to manage in scleral lens wear. And another study, this one by Tom Arnold, looked at RK in scleral lens wear. Same thing. You see in hypoxia-induced changes to that cornea in these challenge diet, which we normally, if you do it right, but Damien is going to tell us all that, you won't see those probably in your normal scleral lens wear. Okay,